This is a video about our small fleet of Mitsubishi Delicas, mostly focusing on how we've camperized them to be able to live in these for several months per year on a sustained basis. And the first question is why did we pick a weird Japanese minivan right-hand drive vehicle with no documentation as an expedition vehicle for traveling in all these remote places around the world? The first reason we chose the Mitsubishi Delica is there's quite a few of them in Canada, and they're relatively cheap. You can get a decent one for about $10,000 to $12,000. We have 4 of them from 1999 through 2002. They are quite a decent 4x4 platform underneath. It's all copied from the Mitsubishi Pajero Montero vintage. And there's relatively few companies would have chosen to put a 4x4 with transfer case and real 4x4 and all-wheel drive and 4-low underneath of a minivan. For instance, we can see with Toyota on the Sienna, they just made it a reasonable, cost-effective all-wheel drive system. It was very simple, easy for people to understand. Whereas this is a real 4x4, which we appreciate. You can see they take a lift quite nicely. It may not show from this angle, but it's quite decent high clearance. It's not a Jeep Wrangler. It's not a Unimog. If you decide that you want a mud bogging machine or you want to go out and chase your friends around with their wicked jacked up 4x4 machines, then this is not the machine for you. But we find the Delica to be quite small, and it can get us through tight European villages. It can get us through small back roads in Mexico and small back roads in narrow back roads in Canada, and we can get back out again. Mitsubishi made the Delica with both a 2.8 liter 4-cylinder diesel and a V6 3-liter gasoline engine. We chose the gasoline for our fleet, and this came down to one good reason is that you can accidentally put diesel into a gasoline car and it's not the end of the world, whereas on a diesel, that's probably the end of that vehicle. The gasoline is definitely much more complicated than the original diesel engines, but it is just a basic fuel-injected engine, and variants of it were sold in North America. They were even put into Dodge Caravans and Monteros. So it's a very normal engine, whereas the diesel in North America was never officially sold here through any channels. The diesel seems to have a bit of a bad reputation for blowing through head gaskets, and if you do have a fuel pump problem, that can be expensive. So 3 years in, we're very happy with our choice of this 3-liter gasoline engine. This Delica, which we call Puma, when you have 4 Delicas, you have to name them just to keep them straight. Marta didn't want to refer to them by the VIN number. We have a quite heavy-duty coastal off-road bumper that I welded up from a kit, and it's got this 8,000-pound winch in here, and I'm really happy to have a winch on these vehicles. But this bumper is quite heavy. This is probably pushing 100 kilos bolted on here, and it does screw up the airflow a little bit, I believe. This van chewed through several alternators after putting the bumper on until I added a bit of more airflow to it. I am interested in adding another bumper, building custom bumpers for the rest of the fleet eventually, because I think I can do a better job. I can make a more appropriate, tighter bumper tucked in. The bumper's nice compared to the stock plastic bumper, because it gives us a better approach angle when we're 4x4ing. But I'm certainly looking for something lighter and something a little more appropriate for what we do. We're not hardcore 4x4 people. You can see that we don't have a roof rack on this. Carrying lots of stuff on a roof rack is a common mark of an overlander. And on this one, we decided that we would put everything inside the vehicle and keep the outside of the vehicle clean. It makes us a little bit less inconspicuous, and that's something we like about this van overall, that it doesn't look like an overlanding vehicle. It looks pretty low profile. You can park it in a parking lot and your vehicle doesn't look like it's full of goodies for somebody to steal. We don't have even solar panels on the roof because we've decided that rather than burn the gasoline to push the solar panels through the air when we're driving, we'll just burn the gasoline to run the alternator and charge the house battery. And 3 years in, we're still very happy with that decision, although it does get a little tight inside sometimes for storage. One of the disadvantages of the Delicas as we've set them up is this high clearance means that our storage and our entire house starts very high up in the air. For example, you can see the distance between the beginning of our little house on the floor here and the ground. We're 50 or 60 centimeters up in the air. And we have a friend who got herself a little 2019 Dodge Grand Caravan, and her storage starts about 12 centimeters up in the air, which is not great for driving on rough forestry roads, but it's amazing for just having a lower profile vehicle with more storage. Another disadvantage of the Delica is that this was designed, the L400 in particular, was designed by Mitsubishi as a luxury vehicle. So there's a lot of features in it. For instance, they come with little steps for stepping up into the vehicle. There's actually an automatic step that used to be here that would open. Little motor would pop it out when we opened the sliding door. It also had dual zone heating, ventilation, air conditioning. And I've just decided that this is not compatible with my idea of an expedition vehicle. So over the years, I've gotten good at just deleting this, taking off the steps. I've pulled the air conditioning out of this vehicle completely. There's a lot of complexity associated with that. And to me, every one of these features that can be deleted is just a win for overall reliability. The front of our van build, we've made relatively few modifications from the driver and passenger seat forward. For a lot of people, when they get a Delica and they discover that it's quite a people mover, it has seating for 7 or 8 people, it's heartbreaking to rip out all the seats in the back and do your van build. And we've never been able to come up with a design that allowed us to keep any seats, any of the seat belts, any of the seats in the back. And so these are the only 2 seats that we have. We've also thought a fair bit about the rotating seats, because that would be amazing to be able to take the seat and slide it forward, rotate it 180 degrees and face back, because this is something that a number of Delica people do, especially since the captain chairs are available. We found the captain chairs just weren't commonly available enough for us to consider making it part of our design, especially for 4 Delicas. So that never happened. The traveling with modern devices requires a lot of USB ports. So I've removed the cigarette lighter and put 6 USB ports here. Of course, every time I find I put a USB charging port in a car, within 6 months I discover that it's not high power enough. So these ports will have to come out and be replaced with higher power USB ports. Another thing which came out is that this is great when we're driving, but when you sit, when you've turned off at the end of the day and you're running a laptop up here, we still need USB power. So I've added a switch just underneath here, which we can use to either power these from the house battery or off the engine alternator, as per usual. For phone mounts, we've found that for the type of rough driving we're commonly doing, that the phone mounts that clip onto the heater vents would just break the vent off eventually. So we ended up going with a 17 millimeter ball mount and just putting 2 of them on so we can both have our phones up if we feel like doing that. And that's working really well. We also have a mount here for a DJI Osmo Pocket 3, which is what's being used to film this, so that's not there. And we can use this for filming forward when we're driving or filming backwards so we can talk at the camera while we're driving. That's also working very well. This space right here is really prime real estate, but we've struggled what to do with it. Underneath of this compartment that I custom built here, there is the ABS computer and the airbag computer. So whatever use happens here has to armor and protect those modules, because those are pretty serious. Our latest idea, because we don't really love this, is to build something here to hold shoes, because that's a problem on a long trip, is you need multiple pairs of shoes. They get wet, and because the hot air coming down from the heater also goes into the space, we could use that for drying shoes. So that's our latest idea, what to do there. Underneath and behind the driver's seat is pretty busy. We have a DC to DC converter. This is just running off the alternator. So the wire comes directly from the alternator and goes up to our converter right there. And then the converter goes back into a power distribution system here. Details aren't particularly important. We have a 200 amp hour LFP battery bolted down, well secured to the floor right here. And this is a gasoline fired heater that, of course, combustion air and combustion exhaust are below, underneath the floor. And cold air comes in here, hot air goes out and is plumbed into the rear heater vents. And that has worked really well. Those heater vents became available because I decided on the last two conversions to eliminate rear heating air conditioning off the engine. And happy with that as a solution. These vans have a very simple toilet for emergency-ish use. And this is the very first one I built, so the construction quality is not amazing. But this aluminum supports right here, they sit down onto hard points that I've added into the frame of the seats. And then the actual use of this, we carry some absorbent powder for urine and little bits of diaper cloth and disposable bags, so we can basically pop this in and hold it in place with a ring. And this has been useful in places where we decide that we cannot go outside at night to go bathroom. For instance, if we're sleeping in a parking lot where we're really not supposed to be sleeping in, then we can bring this out and we know that we're not going to have to escape the vehicle. We can stay contained and low profile all night. The bedroom in this van was designed after a road trip we did in a 1993 Pajero. And I had some requirements after a month in that vehicle. One is I needed to be able to sit up in bed when I got dressed. I needed to have access to clothes from the bed. And the bedroom really should be closed off so it feels like a little cave, not sleeping in a fishbowl of windows all around you. And I think our design has really hit the mark on this. The bed itself is is 1.2 meters wide, 48 inches, which would never work for me at home, sharing a bed that's only that wide. But it turns out in a van, it's worked out fine because you're not surrounded by a cliff down to the floor. You have walls on both sides. So it can be a little tighter. And so 48 inches has been completely fine. It's also about 12 centimeters of foam, which has worked out fine for us as well. You can see there's shelves over on the far side. Those shelves are 20 centimeters deep and about 20 centimeters high for each pocket. And then rather than putting doors on the shelves, what we did is we just wrapped the shelf in stretchy fabric and cut holes in it to hold everything inside. That's worked out well. Access to the storage underneath is gotten to by lifting up this foam panel, which has been made out of foam and fiberglass, so it's outrageously cheap, or outrageously light, not cheap. And now we have a bunch of open space underneath for backpacks and ye old chainsaw, some tools. We have a little bit more structured space over here with this 60 centimeter by 60 centimeter drawer, just on slides that pulls out. We realized after shipping out our first van to Mexico that we needed locks on this so it doesn't slide forward every time you step on the brakes. We just have this secured with this little screw right here. But this space underneath has been good. Every little bit of structure helps. Just bungee cords to hold things in place. And you know, we carry around a little air compressor, have a fire extinguisher right here. But this has worked out really quite well. Our van that went to Mexico has a bed which converts into a sofa, which seemed absolutely essential to me at the time and has turned out to be completely unnecessary. You don't want to sit on a sofa inside such a small space. It's not comfortable. And so that was a total, very, very complicated thing to build. And this has been simple enough for us. The requirement of being able to sit up in bed and having a thick enough mattress to be comfortable on it has led to some hard compromises underneath. And based on having the high roof, for us the high roof as opposed to the low roof is an essential part of the build, we had 30 centimeters of space underneath. And that's worked out okay as long as we keep it free and clear and we don't have any complicated mechanisms as part of this. But we'll see in the back that there's some places where we absolutely need more than 30 centimeters underneath for, well, in that case, it's the fridge. We'll take a look at that next. We don't think there's enough room in this Delica for 2 people to live and cook inside. So we've gone with building our kitchen and pantry off the back. Now this has complicated some uses of the van. For instance, when we have our hitch bolted on, so we can have a swing out bike rack, now every time we need to get to the kitchen, we need to swing out or deal with whatever is trailering behind. And that's just a trade-off of having a small van for us. Our kitchen, first of all, the pantry, all of this is designed very tightly against the window and the rear hatch. So it really maximizes space. We've also decided to maximize space by leaning this whole pantry structure back into the van to keep it as deep as possible. There's an outrageous amount of space in this, and it's all built from 5mm thick plywood. So the structure itself is fantastically light and just epoxied together. So incredible amount of room for storing kitchen utensils and food, and it really blows me away when we unload this just how many boxes of stuff we have in here. And of course we have a cutting board / table for working on, which is part of this. There's a 30-quart fridge, which pulls out here, and this has been cut to allow the fridge door to open. This fridge pulls about 1 amp average, which means that the fridge will run off our 200 amp hour battery for 8 days, which is a lot for us. Also behind the fridge, we have more storage for our chairs and extra food and stuff as necessary. The challenge with the fridge is that we could not get a sufficiently large fridge which would fit underneath the bed. So what we did instead is the fridge slides underneath where our heads are when we sleep. So there actually is no mattress underneath of our heads. We just put a little bit of foam there, and the mattress stops at our shoulders, but that's okay because there's a pillow there anyway. So that's how we made room for a 40 centimeter high fridge. This is our little cooking drawer. When we first got into this, we assumed we would be cooking with a white gas stove, so we'd have the option of running off gasoline. So I was really concerned about massive flare-ups from those stoves because the Coleman stoves are known to be temperamental. So we have room for 2 burners in here, although we find that 1 burner is plenty for us. We've chosen to just go with isobutane as opposed to propane as our primary fuel source. Propane was eliminated because it turns out that propane fittings are not standardized around the world. So if we design all of this for a particular size of propane tank, then when we travel to some other random country like Argentina, we may not be able to fill that tank. And then we have to start throwing things away. So we just carry these cheap AliExpress camping stoves, and they're 20 bucks each. So we can have 3 with us. So if any of them has a problem, they can go. And that's been working very well so far. We find one of these canisters lasts us for about a week. And lots of room in here for pots. Everything folds up nice and quick. Currently, we use this pocket right here for water storage. There's a little platform, so there's room for a 6-liter water bag underneath, and then a bunch of these 4-liter water bottles on the side. So this gives us about 22 to 30 liters of water storage. I would prefer more. I would like to weld up a stainless steel water tank, which would go in this space, but there will always be more projects. Every little bit of space is precious. Our little pull-out drawer here has room for a decathlon table. We can just put down on the ground when we want to sit down and be comfortable and we're not being eaten by mosquitoes in the Northwest Territories. You can also see our shower system is pretty simple. We don't have room for hot water shower inside or outside, so we just have a basin and some washcloths and soap. The back hatch here, when we're in a place where it actually gets dark, which is not the Northwest Territories in July, we have this light available. We can just turn on. Because we're in the Northwest Territories, we just added on this van a system to give us a little bit of netting around us. So we have a bug net customized for this van, which we can completely enclose this space. And this, along with a little pole, will hold the bug net up and give us a little bit more living space when we're inside the net, being protected by all those nasty little critters. And there is also a tent structure that we built, which can be hung over all of this, and this can protect us from the rain and the wind if we're cooking in miserable conditions. This is a downside of this design. It's great in places like Mexico where it's warm and sunny for months and months on end. And if it does rain, you can just go get a burrito somewhere. Whereas, places like Alaska or Iceland, we anticipate challenges to cooking and eating outside. The power system is organized onto these little aluminum sheets, and you can see that we've situated this one in a place that gives access to the switches both from the bedroom and from the cooking area here. Very happy with how this is organized. Ventilation and power to outside. I've done this by just removing this window and putting in a sheet of galvanized steel and painting it. So this is just a little vent and the fan. Usually what we do is we just roll down the front windows a little bit and put on some bug screens. But sometimes we're in a place where we just don't feel comfortable sleeping with the windows down at all. And then at that point, we just turn on the fan. There's also power for the Starlink is brought out to this little connector, so we can just unplug this and cap it off and bring our Starlink in. And if I was going to redo this, I don't think it's necessary to remove a window. It would have been totally easy to just put this connector right here and maybe put a fan somewhere here. But it's done now. The favorite part of this build is definitely the cinema. We've got a little projector and just runs off USB, and it pops in and just hangs off a magnet through this little hole in the foam to the roof. And we can just put in a USB stick. We've got 400 gigabytes of movies with us. So every night we just find a movie and kill a couple hours.